Have you ever noticed that words in English that end in ed can have different pronunciations? In this video, I'm going to explain 3 rules that will help you to determine how to pronounce a word that ends in ed in English. If English is your first language, you may have never even noticed that there are so many different ways to pronounce the ed combination at the end of words in English. You learned this pattern automatically. As someone who is studying English as a second language, you also need to learn the patterns in order to pronounce the words correctly. Let's first look at these 3 words that I have written on my whiteboard. Each word has a different pronunciation for the ed combination at the end of the word. Here we have the word played. The ed sounds like a d, played. She played tic-tac-toe. She played. Here we have the word jumped. The ed sounds like a t, jumped. She jumped into the lake. And here, in the word decided, the ed combination sounds like id, decided. Now, let's learn about voiced and unvoiced sounds. A voiced sound is where your vocal cords vibrate. So if I were to say this example, b, 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 my vocal cords are vibrating, boy. In this example, the vocal cords are not vibrating. The air is in the mouth. P, p. This is called unvoiced. It's important that you know the difference between voiced and unvoiced sounds, because depending on whether the word ends in a voiced sound or an unvoiced sound will determine whether the sound of the ed is d, id, or t. These examples are in pairs because they're produced in almost the exact same way. The placement of the tongue and the position in the mouth are identical, except for the fact that the first column has sounds that have a vibration of the vocal cords, whereas the second column has unvoiced sounds, or sounds that don't use the vibration of the vocal cords. Let's look at these examples. B, p, d, t, g, k, j, ch, v, f, v, z, s. It's important that you learn to pronounce all of these sounds, because when you learn a foreign language, for example, English, you have to learn all of the different sounds that exist in that language in order to pronounce all of the words in the language. Let me give you an example of the difference between a voiced and an unvoiced sound. Here we have z, and here we have s. The word cheese, cheese, in English is spelled with an S. It's spelled C-H-E-E-S-E. But the word is not pronounced with an S sound, cheese, cheese. It's actually pronounced with a voiced sound, a Z, cheese, cheese. Do you like cheese? Do you like cheese? Instead of do you like cheese? Cheese? Cheese would not be the correct pronunciation of the word cheese in English. Now that we know what voiced and unvoiced sounds are, we can determine how to pronounce the ed combination at the end of words in English by deciding whether the sound before the ed is voiced or unvoiced. These words here have an unvoiced sound before the ed. kiss, laugh, watch. When we add the ed sounds like a T. Kissed, laughed, watched. The reason is because there's no vocal cord vibration. So we don't add d vocal cord vibration in the d. We keep the unvoiced sound. So st, st, kissed, kissed. It has a T sound. Here we have laughed, because the word laugh is unvoiced. There's no vocal cord vibration, so we add a t. Laughed. We don't say laughed. We don't bring the sound down here. We keep the sound in the mouth. So laugh, laughed. And here we have watch, ch, ch, is in your mouth. It's not here in the throat. It's ch in the mouth. So we keep the sound in the mouth. Watched, watched. Kissed, laughed, watched. Here we have words that have a voiced ending before we add the ed. That means that they end in a sound that has vocal cord vibration. Live, v, v, live. When that happens and we add the ed, the sound becomes a D sound. So lived, lived. Here we have prefer, The R in English produces vocal cord vibration. So when we add the ed, we're going to use a D sound. Preferred, preferred, or preferred. I forgot to mention, vowels are voiced sounds. Therefore, since the word play ends in a vowel sound, a, we're going to pronounce the D or the ed like a D. Played, played, because it's a voiced sound. So remember, if it's unvoiced, it's going to sound like a T. Kissed, laughed, watched. And if it's voiced, it's going to be pronounced like a D. Lived, preferred, played. If a word ends in a D or a T before we add the ed, then it's going to sound like id. Decide, decided. Want, wanted. Hate, hated, or hated. In English, we can pronounce the T sometimes like a D, like city or pretty. Hate is pronounced like a T, but hated is pronounced like a D. Decided, wanted, hated. Now there is an exception to these rules. If a word is an adjective and it ends in an ed, then we're going to pronounce the word or the ed like id. For example, crooked, sacred, naked, and wicked, like the Broadway play, Wicked. This might seem like so much information, but now that you know this, when you listen to native speakers speak, you're going to be able to hear them say jumped with a T, or watched with a T, or what's another word? Lived with a D. And as you start to hear that, and as you learn those patterns, you're going to start to understand and automatically start pronouncing the words in the same way that a native speaker would speak. For now, I recommend that you write down a lot of words in English that end in ed and try to determine whether they're pronounced with a d, a t, or an id sound. You can find a list of all of the voiced and unvoiced sounds in English on the internet. You can also go to an awesome site called Youglish.com, where you can type in a word and you can find videos of people who are saying that word in context. That's an amazing way to verify the pronunciation of a word. I do this in lots of languages, in French, Portuguese, and Italian. Check out my website, CoreyNicholas.com, where you're going to find language learning tips, resources, and other materials.